The wind carried the scent of freshly tilled earth as Ronan Hale tightened his grip on the steering wheel of his battered old truck. The road stretched endlessly ahead, leading him and his daughter toward yet another uncertain destination. A single dad, down on his luck, searching for work, searching for something solid beneath his feet. But fate had other plans. A few miles ahead, stranded in the middle of a vast golden field, stood a rusty, broken-down tractor, and beside it, a woman whose piercing gaze held more secrets than she let on. Ronan had no idea that stopping to help would change everything, that the woman before him, Celine Whitmore, wasn't just a struggling farmer. She was the owner of thousands of acres of prime farmland, and the last defense against a corporate giant threatening to swallow her legacy whole. One act of kindness would set off a chain of events neither of them could have predicted. Could an unlikely partnership become the key to saving a farm? Could a man who had spent his life fixing broken things find a place where he truly belonged? There's only one way to find out. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, make sure to subscribe if you love tales of resilience, heartwarming romance, and the incredible power of kindness. This is a journey of hope, love, and second chances set against the breathtaking backdrop of America's heartland. Now let's begin. The sun hung low over the vast expanse of golden fields, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. It was the kind of autumn afternoon that painted the American heartland in shades of fire and amber, a quiet beauty that could steal the breath from any wandering soul if they had the time to notice. Ronan Hale didn't. His battered old truck rattled down the dusty county road, tires kicking up clouds of dirt as he focused on the road ahead. His hands, calloused from years of work, gripped the wheel with a tension that had become second nature. The map on the passenger seat was marked with circles, places he'd tried, doors that had already closed. Job hunting wasn't easy when you had nothing left to your name except a few tools, a pile of unpaid bills, and an 8-year-old daughter sleeping in the back seat. Lily. Ronan glanced in the rearview mirror, his heart softening at the sight of his little girl curled up under his old flannel shirt, her dark curls spilling across the seat. She had been a trooper through it all, never complaining, always trusting him to make things right. He had to. A loud bang interrupted his thoughts. Ahead, on the side of the road, a large red tractor sat at an awkward angle, steam billowing from its hood. A woman stood beside it, her arms crossed, staring at the machine with a mixture of frustration and determination. Ronan didn't hesitate. He pulled over, his truck groaning in protest. The woman turned as he stepped out, brushing a strand of chestnut hair from her face. She was tall, with a presence that was both commanding and weary. Her denim jeans and work boots were coated in dust, and the sleeves of her flannel shirt were rolled up, revealing tanned forearms. She looked like she belonged to this land, as much a part of it as the sky and soil. "You need a hand?" Ronan called, pushing his baseball cap back. The woman exhaled, clearly weighing her options. "Unless you happen to have a miracle in your toolbox," Ronan smirked. "I can take a look." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Be my guest. I'm Celine." He wiped his hands on his jeans and popped the hood, immediately spotting the problem. The radiator hose had come loose, and coolant was everywhere. Not a disaster, but bad enough that the tractor wasn't going anywhere on its own. "This your land?" Ronan asked, glancing around. Celine nodded, her gaze following his. "Whitmore Acres, my family's farm." It was then that Ronan really took in his surroundings, the sheer vastness of it. Rolling fields stretched in every direction, the golden crops swaying with the breeze. It wasn't just a small family farm. This was an empire of land, the kind that took generations to build. He whistled low, Hell of a place. Selina gave a short, almost self-conscious laugh. Yeah, guess it is. Ronan didn't pry. Instead, he got to work. Selene watched as he moved with quiet efficiency, his hands steady, his focus unshaken. There was something about him, something solid, dependable. She had spent her life surrounded by men who either wanted to take over her land or impress her with their wealth. This man seemed different. You're good at this, she commented. Ronan shrugged. Spent years fixing things that were broken. Something about the way he said it made Selene pause, but she didn't push. Within minutes, he had the hose secured, the clamps tightened. Should hold until you can get a proper replacement, he said, wiping his hands. Selene exhaled. You just saved me a 2-hour walk back to the farmhouse. Thanks. No problem. Ronan glanced toward his truck, where Lily was now sitting, up rubbing her eyes. We were just passing through. Selene followed his gaze. Your daughter? He nodded. Lily. Selene studied him. He didn't just look tired, he looked worn, like a man who had carried too much for too long. You looking for work? Ronan blinked. What? She gestured to the tractor. I could use someone who knows how to fix things. Farmhands are great, but machinery is its own beast. I need someone who can keep it running. Ronan hesitated. He had spent so long chasing jobs, moving from town to town, never staying still. This was different. This was stability, but stability came with risk. Still, Lily's voice cut through his doubts. Daddy, are we staying here? He looked down at her small face, her hopeful eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't have the heart to say no. Selene extended a hand. What do you say? Ronan met her gaze, then shook her hand, his grip firm. I say, let's see where this road leads. The morning sun broke over the rolling fields of Whitmore Acres, casting long golden shadows across the land. It was a crisp, late autumn dawn, the kind that made the air sharp and clean, filled with the scent of damp earth and harvested crops. For Ronan Hale, it was an unfamiliar sight. Standing on the porch of the farmhouse, he took a slow sip of the coffee Selene had handed him, his gaze sweeping across the vast landscape. It had been years since he'd last stood in a place so open, so untamed. The cities he'd drifted through had always felt suffocating, too full of noise and steel. This was different. A creak of wood behind him made him turn. Lily stood in the doorway, wrapped in his flannel shirt, rubbing sleep. Yet from her eyes, Daddy, are we really staying here, she mumbled. Ronan crouched to her level, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. For now, sweetheart, let's see how things go, okay? Lily nodded, trusting his answer the way she always did. That trust made his chest tighten. He had let her down before. He didn't want to do it again. Selene stepped outside, tucking her hands into the pockets of her work jeans. You're up early, Ronan smirked. Force of habit. Good. She nodded toward the barn. Boone will be expecting you in 10 minutes. He'll show you the ropes. Ronan followed her. Gaze. In the distance, an older man with a weathered face and a posture as solid as an oak tree was unloading supplies from a truck. Boone Calloway. Ronan had met him briefly the night before. A man of few words, but a keen observer. He had sized Ronan, up with one sharp glance, and given a single nod. Approval. Skepticism. Ronan wasn't sure, but he'd earned his place in tougher crowds before. The barn was alive with movement when Ronan arrived. The scent of hay mixed with engine grease, and the distant sound of livestock echoed through the rafters. Boone didn't look up from where he was tightening a bolt on a rusted plow. Glad you didn't run off, the older man remarked. Ronan raised an eyebrow. Not yet, anyway. Boone grunted in amusement, handing Ronan a wrench. Let's see if you actually know your way around machines, city boy. Ronan knelt beside the plow, inspecting the worn-down mechanism. Years of rust and neglect had made it sluggish, but the core structure was still sound. He adjusted the wrench, tightening a bolt with practiced ease. "Not bad," Boone muttered. "What else do you see?" Ronan ran a hand along the axle, feeling the uneven wear. "Your front wheels are off balance. Too much weight shifting to one side. If it keeps up, it'll snap in a few months." Boone nodded, impressed. "And the engine?" Ronan stood, wiping his hands. "Needs new fuel filters. You're pushing it too hard." A slow smile tugged at the corners of Boone's mouth. "All right, you're not useless," Ronan chuckled. "High praise." Boone clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on then, I'll show you where we keep the real messes." The day passed in a blur of work, fixing a broken water pump, welding a cracked trailer hitch, rewiring an old generator. Ronan lost himself in the rhythm of it, the satisfaction of repairing something tangible. It was a rare feeling to build, instead of just scraping by. By midday, the sun was hot, and the air smelled of wheat and gasoline. As Ronan wiped sweat from his brow, Celine approached, carrying a metal lunchbox in one hand and a curious expression on her face. "You haven't stopped all morning," she remarked. Ronan took the lunchbox with a nod of thanks. "Keeps me busy." Celine leaned against the fence, watching him. "You're good at this," Ronan shrugged. "Been fixing things my whole life." Celine hesitated, as if weighing her next words. "Where were you before this?" Ronan exhaled. Slowly, he could give her the short version. Detroit, a failing auto shop, the slow collapse of everything he had built. But there were some stories that were easier left untold. "On the road," he said simply. Celine didn't press, just nodded. "Well, the work's here if you want it." Something in her tone made him pause. It wasn't just an offer of employment, it was something more. A quiet acknowledgement that he wasn't just another worker passing through. For the first time in a long time, Ronan felt the possibility of staying. That evening, as the sky turned to lavender and gold, Ronan sat on the porch, watching Lily chase fireflies in the tall grass. Her laughter echoed across the land, light and free in a way he hadn't heard in years. Selena stepped outside, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. She handed him one, then leaned against the porch railing. "Your daughter seems happy here," she said. Ronan nodded. "She likes open spaces. She's never had much of that before." Celine took a slow sip of coffee. "You could stay." Ronan turned to her. "Is that an invitation?" Celine held his gaze, her expression unreadable. "It's an option." He let the words settle between them. For the first time in years, Ronan wasn't running. He wasn't packing up to leave before the sun rose. For the first time in years, he was considering staying. The morning mist clung to the fields as Ronan rolled up his sleeves, stepping out onto the damp soil of Whitmore Acres. The scent of fresh earth and morning dew mixed with the faint trace of gasoline lingering on his hands. It had been only a few days since he'd agreed to stay, but already the farm had a way of settling into his bones. Boone was waiting for him near the machinery shed, arms crossed, his gaze sharp as ever. "Hope you're not sore from yesterday," the older man remarked. Ronan smirked. "I've worked through worse." Boone handed him a wrench. "Good, because today we've got real work to do." He led Ronan toward the east fields, where an old irrigation system had been malfunctioning for weeks. Water pooled unevenly in the furrows, drowning some crops while leaving others bone dry. Celine had mentioned it in passing the night before, her frustration barely hidden behind the calm exterior she wore so well. They arrived at the rusted water pump, its gears groaning. In protest, Boone knelt down, muttering under his breath, "Damn thing's been acting up for years." This guy who worked on it barely kept it running. Ronan studied the machine, running his fingers over the corroded pipes. "It's not just the pump," he said. "The whole system's out of balance. The pressure's off, and it's wearing everything down." Boone raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Ronan gave him a look. You want it fixed, or you want to keep throwing patches on it? The older man let out a short chuckle. Fair enough. Let's get to work. They spent the next few hours dismantling the pump, working in a comfortable silence. Boone, despite his rough edges, had a sharp mind. He knew the land the way Ronan knew engines, by instinct, by years of trial and error. At one point, Boone leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow. So you're really planning on sticking around? Ronan tightened a bolt. Seems that way. Boone nodded, as if testing the words. Celine's tough, but she's been carrying this place on her back for too long. Ronan didn't look up. She doesn't strike me as someone who needs saving. Boone smirked. No, but even the strongest shoulders have limits. As the afternoon stretched on, Ronan returned to the farmhouse, his muscles aching but his mind clear. He was beginning to understand the rhythm of the land, the endless demands, the quiet victories of a well-run farm. Celine was standing by the wooden fence, watching over a group of farmhands loading hay onto a trailer. Her posture was relaxed, but Ronan could see the calculated awareness in her gaze, a woman who had learned to always be in control. He leaned against the fence beside her. Water systems patched up, should hold until we can replace the pipes. Celine turned to him, surprised. That was fast. Ronan shrugged. Not my first time fixing something held together by rust and prayer. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. I appreciate it. They stood there in silence for a moment, the golden light of late afternoon casting long shadows across the fields. Then Celine spoke, her voice quieter. My father used to say a farm is only as strong as the people who keep it running. Ronan glanced at her. Sounds like he was a smart man. Celine's expression darkened just for a second. He was, but he was also stubborn. Always thought he had to do everything himself. Ronan studied her profile, the sharp angles, softened by the sunlight, the way her fingers absently tapped against the fence post. Sounds familiar, he murmured. Celine turned to him, eyes narrowing slightly, but there was no real irritation, just the unspoken challenge between two people who recognized a similar fire in each other. Before she could respond, a voice called from the distance. Miss Whitmore. They turned to see Everett Monroe, dressed in his usual clean-cut suit, despite the dust swirling in the air. His presence was like an intrusion, out of place among the raw honesty of the farm. Ronan felt the shift in Celine immediately. Her shoulders squared, her expression smoothing into something unreadable. Everett stopped a few feet away, offering a rehearsed smile. I was hoping to catch you before you got too busy. Celine's voice was polite, but cool. What do you want, Everett? Everett gestured toward the fields. I heard you've been dealing with equipment failures. A farm this size needs modern infrastructure, Celine. You know my offer still stands. Ronan's jaw tightened. So this was the guy trying to buy her out. Celine's fingers clenched against the fence. I told you the farm's not for sale. Everett sighed, as if she were being unreasonable. Come on, Celine. You can't keep fighting this battle alone. Let me help. Ronan watched the exchange carefully. There was something in Everett's tone, not concern, but condescension. Celine held her ground. I don't need your help, and I don't appreciate you showing up unannounced. Everett's jaw twitched, but he kept his smile in place. His gaze flicked to Ronan, assessing. And who's this? Ronan stepped forward slightly, his presence solid. Ronan Hale. Everett's lips curled in a smirk. Ah, the mechanic. How quaint. Ronan didn't bite. He'd met men like Everett before, the kind who thought money made them superior. Celine crossed her arms. We're done here, Everett. Everett exhaled through his nose, clearly annoyed. Fine, but don't. Forget you have options. With that, He turned and walked back toward his car, the tires kicking up dust as he pulled away. As soon as he was gone, Ronan let out a low whistle. "That guy always this charming," Celine sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Everett's been trying to buy up farmland all over the county. He thinks he's the future of agriculture." Ronan frowned. "And you don't?" Celine shook her head. "I think the future should be built by people who actually care about the land." Ronan considered that. He had spent years drifting, fixing things that weren't his, never leaving. A mark. But here, in this place, he was beginning to understand something. Maybe Celine wasn't just holding on to this land out of pride. Maybe it was something deeper, a fight for something worth preserving. And for the first time, Ronan wondered if maybe, just maybe, it was a fight he could be part of. The sky over Whitmore Acres stretched wide and endless, painted in soft hues of pink and gold as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The air was thick with the scent of earth, hay, and the lingering memory of a long day's work. Ronan Hale stood near the barn, wiping the grease from his hands with an old rag. The farm had a way of settling into his muscles, its rhythm becoming his own. He hadn't planned on staying, hadn't planned on belonging anywhere again, but the days had begun to string together like an old melody, one he hadn't realized he missed. Lily was sitting on a hay bale a few feet away, swinging her legs as she watched the farmhands finishing up for the evening. Celine stood near the fence, speaking in hushed tones with Boone. From the stiffness of her posture, Ronan could tell something was wrong. He wasn't the type to pry, but something about Celine's shoulders, the way they carried too much weight, too much unspoken burden, made him walk over. Boone caught sight of him first and nodded. "Figured you'd be interested in this." Celine exhaled, rubbing her temple before turning to Ronan. "Everett's not just making offers anymore. He's making moves," Ronan frowned. "What kind of moves?" Celine handed him a stack of official-looking documents. He scanned the pages quickly, his sharp eyes catching words like land assessment, water rights, and government buyout incentives. "This is bad," Ronan muttered. Boone grunted. "No kidding," Celine crossed her arms. "Everett's been buying up small farms on the outskirts, consolidating them under his agribusiness model. He's lobbying for zoning changes that could make it impossible for independent farmers to compete." Ronan narrowed his eyes. "And Whitmore Acres?" Celine's jaw tightened. "We're the last holdout. If we go under, so does everyone else in this county who's still fighting to keep their land." Ronan let out a slow breath, his mind already working through the implications. "So that's why he was so damn smug." Boone folded his arms. "Everett thinks he can wait her out. He's banking on Celine getting tired, making a mistake, or running out of options." Ronan shook his head. "Does he even know who he's up against?" A ghost of a smile flickered across Celine's lips. "He's about to find out." Later that evening, as the farm quieted under the weight of twilight, Ronan found Celine in the barn, brushing down one of the horses. The rhythmic motion of her hands against the animal's coat seemed to steady her, grounding her in the one thing that remained constant: this land, this farm, this fight. Ronan leaned against the stall, watching her for a moment before speaking. "So what's the plan?" Celine didn't look up. "You assume I have one?" Ronan smirked. "I assume you're not the type to just roll over." She let out a soft chuckle. "No, I'm not." She set the brush down and turned to face him, her gaze sharp but not unkind. "The land is my leverage. Everett might have money and influence, but he doesn't have the one thing he wants most: control of Whitmore Acres." Ronan crossed his arms. "And how do we make sure he never gets it?" Celine hesitated. "I have an idea, but it's risky." Ronan arched an eyebrow. "Let's hear it." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Everett's whole plan hinges on public perception. He's banking on the idea that small farms are dying. that industrialized agriculture is the only way forward. But if we prove